40 years ago, Madam Speaker, Congress enacted the Hyde Amendment, a law that continues to this day to proscribe federal Medicaid funds from being used to subsidize abortion in most circumstances. More than 20 peer-reviewed studies show that more than 2 million people are alive today, 2 million, because of the Hyde Amendment. 2 million people who would have been aborted instead survived because public funds were unavailable to effectuate their violent demise, while their mothers benefited from prenatal health care and support. 2 million survivors who have had the opportunity to live and to enjoy the most basic and most elemental of all human rights, the right to life. Madam Speaker, we are experiencing a megatrend in America, consistently reflected in polling data, including the most recent polling data for the Marist poll yesterday. That showed that 61% of Americans are against public funding for abortion, and most want, even those who identify as pro-choice, more restrictions to protect the innocent unborn. People are seeing the truth of who abortion actually destroys, as today's proudly shared first baby pictures are most often of ultrasound imaging photos depicting the amazing miracle of the developing child in the womb. Growing numbers of Americans are often shocked to learn that the methods of abortion include dismemberment of a child's fragile body, including decapitation and the severing of arms and legs, or the use of drugs like RU-46 that literally starve the child to death before forcibly expelling her or him from the safety of the womb. Yet the billion-dollar abortion industry continues to cleverly market the cheap sophistry of choice while going to extraordinary lengths to cover up, ignore, and trivialize the battered victim child in the womb. Madam Speaker, pro-life Americans struggle for the day when abortion violence will be replaced by compassion and empathy for women and respect for the weak and most vulnerable among us, the child in the womb. They believe, as do my pro-life colleagues, that we ought to love them both, mother and child, and not fund the destruction of children through abortion. Lawmakers also need to hear the courageous voices of women who are silent no more, a rapidly expanding number of women who share the heartbreaking agony and heartbreak that they have endured after procuring an abortion. As I mentioned yesterday, there was a poll that came out, and again, it found that 61% of Americans oppose taxpayer funding for abortion, and only 35% support it, which is precisely what we seek to accomplish with enactment of H.R. 7. It would make the Hyde Amendment and other current abortion funding restrictions permanent and government-wide. I would note parenthetically that soon after the Hyde was enacted in 1976, other abortion funding riders were enacted into law, and Hyde itself was upheld by the Supreme Court in 1980. In 1983, I authored the ban on funding abortion in the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program. Most must be renewed legislatively each and every year. This legislation would make it permanent. The legislation ensures that the Affordable Care Act, until repeal, conforms with the Hyde Amendment. I would remind my colleagues that just a few feet from where I stand, on September 9, 2009, and I have his speech right in front of me, the President of the United States said, and I quote, "And one more misunderstanding I want to clear up. Under our plan, no federal dollars will be used to fund abortions, and federal conscience laws will remain in place." Well, on the latter, the conscience clause remained in place, but they were just simply not enforced. And of course, we know now, as my good friend Ms. Cheney mentioned, we know that according to the GAO, because people kept saying in the early years, oh, there's no funding, public funding for abortion, so we asked GAO to look into it. They came back and said there was much over 1,000 plans paid for abortion on demand.
If the gentleman,
I hope this really is accepted for the profound change that it underscores. The Hyde Amendment has saved 2 million lives. 2 million survivors who would have died had Medicaid funding for abortion not been available. This is over the course of 40 years, but 2 million lives, some of whom were 39, 38. It's about 60,000 children every year. And, if you look at where this comes from, much of the mega-analysis has come from a peer review done by the Guttmacher Institute in 2009. And they have found that there's a 25% reductions in Medicaid abortions when Medicaid money is not available to effectuate the dismemberment and the chemical poisoning of an unborn child. Defense of the unborn child is the human rights issue of our time, Madam Speaker. We talk about the unborn child, we degrade them, we treat them as if they're tumors, warts to be excised, rather than children growing, developing, and maturing. Ultrasound imaging, as we all know, has shattered the myth that somehow an unborn child is anything but human and alive. And I hope that the science, which is very readily available, catches up with the policy. This makes Hyde and all the other amendments permanent. We know that every year we have an annual battle over several of those amendments. It also, finally, Title II, takes out of Obamacare the facilitation and the funding of abortion. When President Obama did his executive order in December in 2010, he said that the Hyde Amendment would be applied to the Obamacare exchanges. For months and years after that, in House debate, people have said that has happened. It did not. We know beyond any reasonable doubt, and we enlisted GAO to look at that. Well over 1,000 plans pay for abortion on demand in the Obamacare exchanges. So that got the votes of the pro-life Democrats needed to effectuate the passage of the Affordable Care Act, but frankly, it hasn't happened. Title II of this bill says the Hyde Amendment will be applied to the Obamacare exchanges. Had that been done faithfully by the President, there would be no need for Title II of this bill. I remember when the President stood right there in September of 2009 and said, under our plan, no taxpayer funding will be used to pay for abortion. Absolutely untrue. This language, H.R. 7, makes that true. We don't want to be complicit in the killing and the maiming of unborn children. And as we know now, beyond any reasonable doubt, post-abortive women increasingly are coming forward and speaking out, those especially who have found peace and reconciliation, to say abortion also hurts women. There are 2 victims in every abortion, mother and baby. 2 million lives saved. That's what we should be all about, life affirming and the saving of human life.